Hello everyone, and welcome to starting a homelab guide where we will continue with installing our first Linux server in ESXi. Last time we installed our first VM in ESXi, which was Windows 10. Today we will actually install our first Linux server in ESXi, and we will use Debian for that. To do that, you first need to log in your ESXi environment, and from there you need to go into storage, data store browser, ISO images, and upload a Debian image. You can also go with Ubuntu, but we are actually going to install Debian today. So to do that, let's go and create a register VM and go and name it. So Debian 01 Linux, and we're going to choose Debian 11 64-bit. Next. We're going to give it 2 CPUs, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and we're going to give it, let's say, 120 gigabytes of disk space. We're going to use 10 provision again, and we're going to assign it to our business network. For our image, we're going to set DVD drive to data store image, choose ISO images, Debian, select, click next, and finish. Now our server is created, so we can actually start. Okay. We're going to go just with, okay, let's go with graphical install. We're going to choose language. Okay, so since we're not using DHCP, we need to set it up manually. If you're running DHCP, you can skip this step. Four spaces. We're going to call this server domain. Set the password. Continue. Put your name here. Eastern time. We're going to use whole disk and set up an LVM. Continue. We're not going to bother with different partitions because this is a VM anyway, so we're just going to leave everything at one partition. We're going to write the changes here. Continue. Continue. Just do this. Continue. My system is now being installed. And okay, we can choose no here because we don't have additional media to install the software because we're going to install software from the internet. Continue. Continue. And I'm actually going to choose this one because, or even better, this one. No proxy for now. Continue. Okay, we're not going to protect. Okay, I'll choose no because this is a lab environment. Continue. We're not going to install any desktop environments of this one. We are going to install Ssh Server, and that's about it. We're not going to install a web server here because we're not going to host any services for now. We can always install it later on. Continue. Okay, install. Since this is a VM, we don't worry about this. Continue. Choose the newly created drive. Continue. Okay, and the install is now complete. We can restart our VM. And in a couple of seconds, it will boot up into our new Debian server. Check that we can actually log in. And here we are. This is our new Linux server. To actually configure stuff on a Linux server inside of this window would be quite impractical. So what we will do is we will actually switch to a terminal window on our OS and connect to the server from there. So let's do that. Okay, so let's check that we can actually connect to it. So it's replying to the pings. Don't worry about the dupe. That's just because it's in the VM inside of a VM. So let's go and connect to the VM. Yes. Okay, so as you can see now we are connected to our Linux server in an SSH shell. So what can we do now? So one of the first things that I like to do is I like to update the system. So let's do that first. Okay, so Debian is a little bit different from Ubuntu. So it doesn't come with sudo installed by default. But you may have noticed that we actually had to enter root credentials when we were installing the system. So what we will do is we will actually just switch and become a root on the Linux server. So you have to be very careful with root because you basically can destroy your whole system just by running a wrong command. So let's see if we can actually install sudo. And let's add our user to sudoers group. So to do that, that's very simple. So user mod ag sudo and then next. So now we are in a sudo group. So we should be able to run sudo commands. So sudo update. Let's see if we can do that. because I have to log out. Let's see. So the reason why I had to do that is because even though I added my username to the sudoers group, it only becomes active when you exit the system and come back. So now we're going to actually do the sudo apt -y upgrade. So as you can see, there are no updates available. So let's check some other stuff as well. So at the moment, we are set to American Toronto time, so local time is okay. And the next thing that we will do is we will set the host name to a fully qualified domain name. Host name, ctl set host name. God, sudo, and that's it. One more thing that we will configure is we will actually disable IPv6 because we're not going to use it in this lab. So let's see what we have. So at the moment, as you can see, our Ethernet adapter has an IPv4 address and also an IPv6 address. Since we don't have a DHCPv6 running on our subnet, it actually assigns itself a link local IPv6 address. So we're going to disable IPv6 stack completely on this server. So to do that, we actually have to do the following. So at the end of the stack, we will, end of this config, we will add the following config. IPv6.conf.all, meaning all interfaces, disable IPv6 equals 1. Okay. Yes. So now if we do, it's at the end of the, and now if we want to enable this, okay, and I believe that IPv6 address is no longer assigned to any of the interfaces. As you can see, we only have IPv4 address. Another good thing to install is fail2ban. Fail2ban is a service that runs in your system and based on configured, they call them jails, it puts the offending IP address in the jail so that it can no longer access the system for a specified period of time. So to do that, we're going to install fail2ban first. So sudo apt install fail2ban. Yes. And now we need to take a look at the sudo cat etc jail.local. Okay, that file doesn't exist, so let's create it by doing this. And let's add some config to it. I already have the config prepared, so I'm just going to paste it here. And finally, I will add certain IPs that will be allowed to avoid fail2ban. So ignore IP equals to system itself, localhost. Then also our internal subnet, which is actually 114.10/24, and that's about it for now. Actually, I'm going to change that to my whole private network so that I don't get locked out of the system. But in uh, real life scenarios, you want to limit that just to uh, networks that you trust. So /8 would definitely not be a good option for you to do in real life scenarios. But and the reason is because if you do this, you're covering all the subnets under 10.0.0.0 all the way until 10.255.255.255, which means that if you have multiple subnets on your router or your firewall configured, and one of them is considered a DMZ or basically allows external access to it, and if that any machine in that subnet becomes compromised, they will be able to attack your machine as well, even though it's not in the same subnet, just by the virtue of this setup here. So you, in general, you want to limit this to whatever you have as a secure subnet in your network. The rest of the config is pretty simple. So the service is enabled. It's called SSHD, this jail. It's enabled. It's looking for SSH port, which is port 22. It's filtering for the SSH daemon. Log path where it will write the logs is var log out log. Max retries 3 times, 300 seconds, and whoever does offend, the fail to ban will be locked for 1 day. So I'm going to test this out now once I restart the service. So let's do this and sudo system ctl restart failed to ban. Okay, and then sudo systemctl status failed to ban. Okay, so the service is running. So let's see what happens if I try to log in multiple times as a user without the proper password. Okay, let's take a look if there's anything in jail at the moment. So to do that, we just okay, and as you can see, now we have one failed attempt that's occurring, and total failed 20 of them, and one IP address is now banned, which is my other computer. So this is how you would configure fail to ban to mitigate any potential SSH unauthorized SSH login attempts. You can use this for other services as well if you're running, but we're not running anything else on this server at the moment. So take a look. So as you can see, we're only listening for SSHD. And that's it. This concludes the video for installing a Linux server. We will use this Linux server in the future as well. But for now, that's it. Thank you for being here, and talk to you next time.